This week on Inside the Headset, we are featuring longtime Division I head coach Tyrone Willingham. In this episode, Coach Willingham shares his thoughts on how representation can be better achieved in the coaching world, details his experience working for the college football playoff, and highlights what he valued during his time as the president of the AFCA. But first, a word from our sponsor. The Werner Ladder AFCA FBS Coach of the Year Award is the oldest award given by the American Football Coaches Association and embodies the nature of respect more than any other award in the game of football. Every coach who believes in the power of football to build better men knows the value of the game. Only a tiny minority of coaches can scale the heights to achieve true excellence. To make the climb, great coaches know they need help from a great team of players and assistant coaches. It's one of the primary reasons Werner Ladder signed on to sponsor the Werner Ladder AFCA FBS Coach of the Year Award in 2019. As a world leader in ladder manufacturing, Werner knows what it means to support a champion's climb to the top. Werner Ladder AFCA FBS Regional Coach of the Year voting opens November 15th and runs through December 3rd. Active AFCA members will receive an email from the AFCA offices with voting instructions the day voting opens. Once the 5 FBS regional winners are selected, those are the 5 finalists for National Werner Ladder AFCA FBS Coach of the Year, and that voting starts in the middle of December and ends the week prior to the 100th Annual AFCA Convention in San Antonio, Texas. For questions regarding Coach of the Year voting, please feel free to contact Vince Thompson at vince@afca.com.
Coach Willingham, thank you so much for joining us this morning. I was super excited about having you on. Before we dive in, I know you want to ask a very important question to all of our coaches, and I know they want to listen up. Let's hear it.
Thank you. First of all, it's a pleasure to be with you this morning. And I think nothing is greater than being a coach. Okay. But let me ask of our coaches this question. What is the most valuable thing in the world? And it says, I am the most desired thing in life. Without me, no one can be healthy, happy, or useful. Without me, the hidden wealth and vast resources of this earth would have no value. Men and women who try to get along without me are characterless, selfish, undeveloped, useless, and unprofitable members of society. I am behind every fortune, every art and science, every achievement, every triumph of man. Rich men and poor men alike often try to find substitutes for me, hoping thereby to secure a larger measure of happiness, peace, and satisfaction. But they are always bitterly disappointed. Instead of gain, every substitute for me brings them loss. As the Creator is greater than the creation, so am I greater than wealth, power, fame, learning, or any other acquired possession or quality of man, because I am the source for which he acquired them. So the question is, what is the most valuable thing in the world?
What a way to get this thing started, Coach. That has kind of got some goosebumps going there. Why is that? Just real quick before we dive into some of these other questions, why is that important to you? What does that question mean to you, and how have you used that in the past?
Well, that as in the reading it says that it is basically the key to everything that man has accomplished. And as a coach, if you want to accomplish, then you have to understand the foundation. Because every coach, no matter what offense, what defense, he's going to talk about a foundation. Okay, establish our foundation. And without it, you cannot have sustained success, let alone success.
Absolutely. Now, Coach, you speaking of success and sustained success, throughout your coaching career, you've had the opportunity to be the head ball coach at 3 historic Division I institutions. What did you do early in your career? That foundation, for lack of a better term, like how did you lay that foundation to prepare yourself to go be a head coach of these very dominant programs?
Well, the honest truth is, I didn't do it, but the foundation was somewhat laid for me. I came along I guess I'm a child of the 60s to a degree, with segregation. And we went to a segregated high school, grades 1 through 12. And probably the most outstanding individual in that community, or one of the most outstanding individuals in that community, was the high school football coach, a man named Gid Johnson. And for some reason, I wanted to be a Gid Johnson. Okay, so the foundation was kind of set that you're watching, you're following, you're looking, you're learning. And I was blessed because my mother was a school teacher in the system. So therefore, as a little kid, you know what happens. You run around under the bleachers at all the events, right? Because she's going to be there. She's working. So it was that start. And I didn't realize that until I got in college, that was really what I wanted to do. So all along, that foundation was being laid for me. And all I had to do was just really realize it and then go to work with it.
So basically, you're pointing at how this coach that you had this interaction with, even prior to being a player yourself, had such an impact on this outstanding career you were able to put together.
Oh, it's amazing because as a little kid, I saw players walk 5 and 6 miles to come to practice. Okay, they didn't have cars. They didn't have access to the things that modern kids have access to. So it was really a labor of love. And obviously, if you don't like your coach, you ain't making a 5-mile walk. Right. Okay, that's not happening. Okay, you're not doing it. You're going to find something else to do. So therefore, those guys in our community grew up admiring and respecting and loving Gid Johnson for the structure that he gave them. And it was willing to make that kind of commitment to travel across town, 5 miles walking. Okay, that's 5 miles coming and then 5 miles going. Right. Okay, so that's a heck of a sacrifice. So when you see that kind of, I guess that kind of respect for an individual, then you say maybe that's something I'd like to be like.
Right. Well, you said something interesting there. You said that those young men had some type of love and liking for that head coach in order to make those hikes. Now, in our landscape, where you got to win games or you don't have a job, and it's so competitive at the collegiate level. How were you able to make sure those kids loved it, but also make sure you were able to still maintain that success on the field?
The first thing is don't get caught up in modern day trappings. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yes, winning is important, but when hasn't winning been important?
Right.
Okay. Simply because there's more money, more all of this, the foundation doesn't change. I'm going to go back to that word. The foundation doesn't change. Why are you coaching? Okay. And I coach because, first of all, I like the competition. I think there's nothing better. Okay. But I also like the fact that when I finish with my young men, at least I hope anyway, okay, that they'll be better fathers, better businessmen, better community leaders. They'll be better husbands. Okay. And they'll make this a better world. Because one of the things that I always want to do, and I still want to do this, okay, with each day, the people that I encounter in my life, I want them to be better because of our interaction. And to me, that's what coaching is. Right. How can I make these young men around our team better and still win? Okay. But don't get caught up in the trappings, because when you do, then you start to make sacrifices that aren't right. Right. And right is never wrong.
Absolutely. Well, it's funny, even how I frame that question. I think oftentimes guys get caught up in, like you said, the winning and maybe doing things the right way. You can do both. You can definitely do both. They can coexist, and there are definitely a great amount of programs that have figured that out. But there's still some times where you might end up making a bad decision and sacrificing the win. And I appreciate you kind of pointing that out. Now, you did mention something about being a child of the '60s. You talked about segregation, a little bit of the landscape of how you grew up seeing football. Equal representation on your coaching staff is something that has been important to you. What are some of the ways you believe in this coaching profession we can do a better job of valuing, honoring all of our members of our community, our coaching community, our local community, et cetera?
Well, the first thing is, I don't think you look at the numbers. I think that's a mistake. Okay. Yes, I do want to have equal representation, but I'm not concerned about the numbers as much as I'm concerned about getting the right people in the right place.
Right.
And so many times they've excluded talented coaches just because of the color of the skin. And that is a crime, because I always said this. My son played football, not a collegiate player, but a high school player. And the question is, who did I want to coach him? I wanted the best coach possible. And don't let color be a factor in that, okay? And that's sometimes where we make the mistake at, as we look at things, well, I want to have one black coach. And honestly, when I came along, that's what it was.
Yeah.
Okay. There was one black coach on the staff, maybe. And that's a huge maybe. Okay. Then it got to 2, then it got to 3, and now there is more balance. But where we're not seeing the balance is in the positions of responsibility. And that's where we need to make the next step, because there are talented individuals that understand the game of football at the highest level, and that are people of color and should have those opportunities.
Absolutely. Now, this might be a tough question here, so feel free to skip it if you don't have the perfect answer for it. But what can people of color or just anybody that feels that they're in an advantageous position to move forward in those positions of power, those coordinator positions, the offensive coordinator positions, the head coaching positions? What can they do better? What on their plate can they do to put themselves in a situation that you were somehow able to figure out?
Well, the first thing is, don't let the system bog you down. Okay? Don't let the fact that you're not a coordinator stop you from being a coordinator. Okay? Now, there's some work that you got to work with that statement on. Okay? Because what we're talking about there is the preparation. I can't control what another guy does in his hiring. I can't control that. What I can control is my talents and my ability. If I prepare myself in such a manner that I know I can coordinate, and you have an opportunity to do that every day, okay? You have an opportunity, especially now in the modern game, we can get almost everyone's film, everyone's video, and you can prepare, you can know systems, you can know defenses, offenses, special teams. You can put yourself in a place that you are thoroughly prepared to be that coordinator. And then you let the chips fall where they're made. Because there are certain things, again, that you can't control, I can't control. I said for myself, I wanted to be the best coach I could be. If that meant being a head coach, great. If it meant being a coordinator, great. But I wanted to be the best that I could be and not place any limits on my ability to achieve that.
So you talked about being prepared, laying that foundation and using the foundation you already have to prepare yourself into these positions. Now, how did you specifically, educate yourself to be prepared? What resources did you tap into? Because like you said, we're in different times now. Guys can hop on YouTube and, you hop on Twitter and even learn ball like that. And it was a little different for you coming through as you were cutting your teeth in the profession. How did you specifically grow, learn offense better, learn defense better, et cetera?
Well, I'll give you an example. In 1991, okay, and that sounds like a long time ago. but in 1991, I was with the Minnesota Vikings. And for me, my computer skills were lacking. So every night I would come home, and we had the house that we were renting had an attic in it. And I set up a computer, and every night I would come home and I'd go up there on that computer and I'd work and I'd master my skills and I'd get myself so that I was computer literate and could do things on the computer. Yes, you probably have a secretary you could pass it to, but what's better than you knowing the skill yourself? Okay. And that's really what our coaches have to do. Those areas that they're weak in, okay, spend the time. Okay. Take the tutorials, do whatever it takes to build up your game so that you have a strong resume in all areas. And to me, it's about finding your weaknesses and strengths and then putting in the time to get better.
Amen, Coach. I love that. Now, you've got to witness the game from a whole different perspective as a head coach. Power 5 programs, I guess they weren't called Power 5 at that point in time, but your major FBS programs, you had the opportunity to be a head coach for over a decade. Now, then you step away from the game for a little bit, and you're brought back to be on this CFP selection committee. Actually, the first group that kind of got the thing rolling, 2014 to 2017, and you're actually doing it again this year, filling in for I believe Coach R.C. Slocum.
Yes.
Can you give us some perspective? Just I know some stuff you may not be able to share, but just some perspective on the selection process and how you view it's changed college football, especially from your seat that you used to sit in when it was the BCS and things were just slightly different.
Well, I think number one, when we're on the outside, we have a tendency not to trust the process. That's the first thing. What is the selection process? How does it work? Are the teams getting a fair shake? And probably the most impressive thing for me about being with the committee is that it's not partisan. Okay, and in this day and age when everything is partisan, okay, the water we drink is partisan. Okay, you kind of get tainted. But this process is clearly one that looks at the strength of team schedule, their wins, their losses, okay, their championships, and it evaluates those for what they are. And when you have a process that is not tilted in one direction or the other, okay, then I think you have something that you can respect and say, this is a good thing. And I think that's where the CFP selection process is at right now, that it is really pretty pure, to be very honest about it. And that's why I came back, as you mentioned, to replace RC, because at first you're asking that question as an outsider the first time around. Are we going to be able to do this in a manner that reflects the integrity of college football? Right. And I think those first 4 years we did that. I think the years after they've done it, and now that I'm back, that's the first question I ask. Okay, what is the integrity of the group? Right. And I was very pleased to see how high it was and the lack of partisanship in the process.
So I think as people are listening, they will be very disappointed with me if I don't ask the question, because anytime this gets brought up, everybody says, when are we going to go from 4 to 8 or 4 to 16 as far as those teams that they select? So I'm not going to just straight ask you that question, because I'm sure there's a ton of stuff that goes into that. But when it does expand, it has to at some point in time. When it does expand, doesn't it get a little bit harder when you start talking about? I think the first 4 are already kind of tough, although you guys have done a tremendous job with it. When you start talking about the 7th and 8th team, doesn't that get a lot more difficult?
Well, the last selection, when it's 4, that number of 4 and 5, okay, can strangle you sometimes. I mean, because the difference can be even less than razor thin. Right. So when it's 7 and 8, 8 and 9, it's going to be the same. Yeah. It's going to be amazingly difficult. And most importantly, it depends on the year, because there are going to be certain years that there's a gap, okay, at between 4 and 6, there's a gap, okay, that somebody just doesn't have it, okay, to give you that. And some years it's 3 and 4. And you're concerned that did you get the right one in that spot to make it the competition it should be. But I think it's going to be amazingly difficult every year. And I think you can see with the transfer portal, I think is the way they describe it, and players changing teams and that type of movement, that it's going to be even tighter, even closer, because some teams, I think this weekend, the Michigan State game takes place. And I think the Michigan State back is a transfer, and he's pretty close to maybe leading the country in rushing average. I mean, so it's going to be amazingly close. But the thing that I like about the committee is they let the teams talk and not the committee.
Yeah, I love that too. you hear very little about who's on it and how it's changed, but like you said, the teams talk. They show up. They play on Saturdays, and I want to say they did a comparison from the BC, like they still run the BCS numbers, and it's been pretty accurate for the most part. I don't think there's been, a year where the top four wouldn't be the top four in that old computer system. And so, I mean, that says a lot in itself.
Well, the other thing that I think you have to love about it, especially when you have football people on the committee. Okay, you may be able to match the BCS in numbers, but there's also a thing about looking at a football team. I can remember one year looking at a team and watching their right tackle. Okay, and I'm saying, man, this is something not right here. Okay, and that right tackle was a weakness. And all of a sudden, when he gets in a big game against a quality, defensive end, he's going to take a little abuse. Okay. Right. And that's something that football people see that the computer may not see.
Yeah.
So having both of those, and the committee, I think, is blessed with some of the best analytics around, since that is the popular word right now.
It sure is.
Do you have analytics? So I think their ability to not only add the human element to it and the computer information to it gives us a pretty good perspective.
Hey, Coach, you said the buzzword of the year, or analytics, and so let me just ask you, as a longtime head coach, I know I didn't prep you for this one, so it's kind of a curveball. Has there been anything you've learned from sitting for the last 5 years, kind of around these analytics and things like that you look back and say, man, if I was back at Stanford or Washington or whatever, I would probably be doing this a little bit different. Is there anything that's emerged, and even if it's not in analytics, just the way the game is played today?
Well, I think first of all, let's talk about the analytics, okay? Because there is no question it's indicative of what's taking place on the field. Mm-hmm. But how do you balance that individual player? Okay, or those individual players. Because as a coach, there's something about knowing that, my running back ain't right today. Okay, his girlfriend is in his head, okay, and he can't quite get out of his own way. Okay, now the analytics doesn't know that.
Nope. That's right.
Okay, unless I'm wrong, unless they got better ones than I've been with. Okay, so those are the things that you have to bring together. And that's where the human element and the coach becomes important. Having those numbers, being aware of those numbers, realizing that they are indicative of what took place on the field.
Right.
But it may not be at that particular moment what that player is going through, what those players are going through, what the emotions of the game are giving you.
Yep.
Okay. And all of that you have to balance. So I love the analytics, but I also think the best coaches have a real feel for their people and can balance the two.
Oh man, that I love that, because I want to say I heard a coach talking about analytics the other day, and it kind of said something very similar. It was more just you can't put analytics on the pulse of your team. You can't put the analytics on the situation and momentum and all those types of things like that. So I love that you pointed that out. Now, just kind of getting back on topic here, you served as the president of the AFCA in 2008 while you were the head coach of Washington. What is something that position taught you about the AFCA that you think coaches should know? The work you guys put in the background, anything like that.
Well, I think most of all, having served as the president showed me that there's opportunity. Okay, and that's the biggest thing that I think our coaches need to understand, is that there is opportunity, and we have to be willing to make the moves, to stay in the profession, to not give up on the profession simply because I don't have all the success I want today. Okay, I think I was a member maybe 20 years, if not more, before I got to that level of serving, of being the president. Okay, and it's probably a little longer than that. But that's a sacrifice sometimes that we're not willing to make because we want the instant gratification. And the first thing is, for me, it's not about me. And really, that's what coaching should be all about. It's not about me. It's not about the individual coach. It's about our team, our players, and how we represent our community. And when you can keep those things in sight, I think your progress is recognized, and people are willing to help you. Because I've never seen people willing to help a selfish person. Okay, they really kind of turn away from him. But somebody that's giving and selfless, they'll take the shirt off their back for.
That's right. Well, this year in San Antonio, we're going to be celebrating our 100th year of getting coaches together and networking and growing and learning. And it's been special for me as, you know, my decade being a coach. And I know what you said, 2 decades, a little over. So, I mean, you've probably been to about 1/4 of these. So, you know, what has this organization meant to you over the years, and how has it benefited your coaching journey?
Well, I think it still serves as the greatest place to meet other coaches. And when you talk about a career, then you're talking about networking, which is a critical part of coaching, and being exposed to other coaches, being exposed to other ideas, and just having a chance to have that type of relationship that you can't get on the field. Okay, because on the field, I'm kind of at your throat. I'm not going to tell you that. Okay, but yeah, I do kind of want to get to it.
Right.
And I know you want to get to mine. But at the convention, we can meet, we can talk, we can share. We have an experience to learn about people on a greater level. And to me, that is as important as anything else in any profession.
Absolutely, Coach. Well, let me tell you, it's been my pleasure, you know, growing up watching you on TV. Part of the reason I got into coaching, and so much appreciated. Thanks so much for the knowledge. Before we go, I just want you to ask that question one more time, give those coaches something to think about.
Well, what I'm hoping is by now, okay, they've had an answer.
Absolutely.
Okay. And usually, I think most people will say religion is the most valuable thing in the world. They will say family is the most valuable thing in the world. And you can go on and on with those things to the individual. But if you notice, and I'm going to try to go back and see, it says somewhere in there that men and women who try to get along without the characterless, selfish, undeveloped, useless, and unprofitable members of society. Okay? And the thing that makes a great family is work. Think about it. What makes a great religion? You ever tried to be spiritual and not work at it? Can't do it.
No.
You got to work.
Right.
Okay? You can't be a great football player without work. Okay? So at the core of everything is work. So the most valuable thing in the world is work.
Oh, man. I thought you were going to ask a question again. I didn't know we were going to get the answer. I like that, Coach. That's awesome. I appreciate you sharing that. Hopefully it resonates with our coaches. And once again, thank you for your time.
Oh, Mara, you are so welcome. Have a great day. And as they say, go AFCA.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Inside the Headset. If you heard anything on this episode that you would like to learn more information about, head over to afcapodcast.com, where you can find every episode and all of the corresponding show notes. While you're there, take a second to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions for the show, please let us know by sending an email to podcast@afca.com. Make sure to follow the podcast on Twitter @InsideTheHeadset and tag it when you share each episode. You can stay up to date with all things AFCA by following the @WeAreAFCA Twitter account. Every episode of Inside the Headset can also be found on your favorite audio streaming platforms such as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. If you are not currently a member of the AFCA, be sure to find us online at afca.com and apply to join over 10,000 NFL, college, and high school coaches from around the country who are striving to be the best they can be. With an AFCA membership, you gain invaluable access to the annual AFCA convention, the bi-monthly magazine, and the new and improved digital library, which contains thousands of videos and articles contributed by hundreds of current and former football coaches. You can also visit afcainsider.com to sign up for our free weekly email newsletter on the right-hand side of the screen. It comes out every Tuesday at lunch and is filled with great articles and stories written by many of the same coaches you hear on the podcast. It's geared to help you become a better coach tomorrow than you are today. Be sure to connect with me on Twitter @CoachMarioPrice. And remember, the AFCA is not just an annual convention. It is an association that continually promotes education, guidance, and networking. But it is also so much more than that. The AFCA is about celebrating the past and educating the future. It is about developing great coaches who will produce great teams and even better people. So invest in your skill set and impact today by engaging with the AFCA.